Okay. Well, good afternoon, everybody. It's a pleasure to have everyone here this afternoon. The purpose of the meeting is to have public input, tribal input, on an initiative that's underway called Opportunity Initiative of Southwestern North Carolina. That's a long name. We've shortened it to, we call it Opt-In. And basically what that does, the 7-county region, as well as the tribal lands, are included in the study. I'm not going to go into the details of, at this moment, what it's about. We will have an introductory discussion in just a few minutes about that. But as is normal for us, we open our meetings with a prayer. And I'm going to ask Marie June Luska, if she will, to open us up with a prayer this afternoon before we get into the business.
Let us pray. Ida dado lista. Skinelna galante. Skidorda. Note eldutan alex or the school or the heliga hin. The guards at all is a turn all a skigay who skill not della honey oglani dust he go eat. To new water egg the skill she go eat. No skill not della it's honey ogles a hoist him. Zandante little a scan eagle stare dotty. No less skin a him. A guy in a don. The guards a dance of shake. Galele is skina. Till not a da he go eagle. Toilet at diddy shares dash a him. Is that he also has skin at the heat as well as hella he go. No last the skate in his says, what should you do? He go ahead, it does it, it's a guard to him, ski stare to him. Does land it down her, he add on him. Father, we come before you with thankful hearts today for this day that you have given us, and we thank you for your love and your mercy and the many blessings that you have given us. We thank you for that, and we praise your name. And we pray for this meeting that you have allowed us to have today. We pray that you will be with each person, and we just pray that you will guide, lead, and direct their minds, and whatever's accomplished here, we'll give you the honor and the praise for it all. And we pray now that you will guide, lead, and direct us, and forgive us for we've come short of that glory. Go with us now throughout this day. In Jesus' name, amen.
Well, thank you, Marie. We always appreciate having you here with us. The initiative has been underway now about 6 months. I was asked to serve on behalf of the tribe on the regional board that's basically trying to put this initiative together. And we've had several meetings here at the tribe. In fact, I think the group came before the tribal council a month or so ago just to give an update and overview of what we're doing. But we've been able to meet with several of the tribal departments, planning, of course, transportation, the finance department, and trying to look at the regional vision that we have as a tribe and how it pertains to the effort that's underway. We've had a couple of luncheons at the casino that really got some good input back and forth from all the participants and the group. Many of them are here today, and without further ado, I want to welcome you to Cherokee, to our portion of the public hearing process. And at this time, I'd introduce Woody Giles, if he will, and he can come up and introduce the staff that's with him. Also, we have several staff. If I could just take a moment, several of the tribal staff that are here also today, sort of a panel of experts on some of the areas that of concern. But if Kathy, if you would just introduce yourself, and we'll come on around and we'll get some folks on this side.
I'm Kathy Littlejohn, and I'm the manager of the public transit system and the mobility services for the tribe. We transport people to dialysis, medical appointments, and for the general public.
Good afternoon. I'm Barrick Myers. I'm the manager of the Cherokee Department of Transportation. Over a lot of construction, bridge building, but also over transportation planning for the eastern band of Cherokee.
Good afternoon, Corey Blankenship. I'm the Treasury Director in the Tribe's Office of Budget and Finance.
Good afternoon. I'm Lynn Harlan. I'm Public Relations Coordinator for the Eastern Band.
Hello, I'm Tinker Jinks. I'm Tribal Planner in Community and Economic Development.
And just a reminder, silence your cell phones. Okay. Woody, we'll turn it over to you at this point.
All right. Again, my name is Woody Giles. I'll introduce our team who's here. Johnny Longo here on the left is heading up the regional vision part of our planning effort. Ben Brown and Stacy Guffey. Oh, there's Stacy. Hiding behind the board are our communications and outreach guys. So that's sort of our core team, and we really appreciate you all having us here. We're glad for the opportunity to be able to work with you and get some input. We're doing this all across the region in all different counties, so we're glad to be here today working with you. So I wanted to start with just a brief background. Some of you will know the story and some of you won't, but just why we're here, how the Opportunity Initiative got started, and a little bit of history. I want to jump back all the way to the very beginning to 1963. There was a book published called Night Comes to the Cumberlands, which was about Eastern Kentucky, and really exposed Appalachia to the national consciousness. It talked about how Appalachia was falling behind a lot of the rest of the nation in terms of educational attainment, incomes, life expectancy, a lot of different measures. And this got the attention of Congress, who created the Appalachian Regional Commission and a number of other efforts to try and bring the greater Appalachian region up on par with the rest of the country. So they designated this area that runs from Alabama all the way up to New York and had a number of initiatives for economic development, education, a lot of things that you're familiar with. One of the big pieces of that was the Appalachian Development Highway System, which you can see on the map there. The red lines were corridors that they identified across all of the states, with the idea that part of the reason for Appalachia lagging behind was a lack of connectivity, that isolation is part of what led to the economic differences and educational differences and other things. And as you know, the mountains are very hard places, they're very expensive places to build roads, so they had additional funding available to build those roads. So a lot of roads all up and down the Appalachian Mountains have been built with these funds, and they gave each of the corridors, they designated a letter, and you might not recognize the letters, but we've all driven on these roads regularly. US 74 is one of the Appalachian highways. Basically anywhere you see the blue sign that says Appalachian Highway, it was built with these special funds. But there was a portion of Corridor K in Graham County, which I'm sure you're familiar with, that has not been built. So we started with the Appalachian Development Highway System. There were a lot of meetings about Corridor K, and people couldn't agree, either at the federal level about what should happen or how it should happen, whether it should happen, and at the local level there was a lot of disagreement. So basically those discussions hit a brick wall. And everyone said, time out, we can't keep having the same conversation. We're not going to decide about Corridor K. We need to zoom out and think about the bigger region, which is where we come in. The idea is that transportation doesn't end at the county lines. Roads go from one county into the other, and transportation isn't the only thing. Corridor K isn't the only thing. We're also thinking about jobs, economic development, a lot of natural resources, culture, sort of the bigger picture of what's going on in the region. And all of those things affect, very well that jobs that happen in one area affect things that happen in another area. Just sort of thinking regionally seemed the right way to go about the plan. So we got to the Opportunity Initiative, or Opt-In, as the Vice Chief mentioned. And that's really not about a sort of top-down legislative effort that everyone will have to buy into and implement, but really a bottom-up thing where we're here to listen to you all today, and also with people all across the region as we have a series of community workshops about what is important to you in the region, what do you want to see in the future, so that we can put all of those pieces into this guide, into a regional vision for the future. I'll mention there's sort of three pieces to what we're doing. One is Opt-In, which is the bigger regional vision, but we're also doing comprehensive plans for Graham County and Cherokee County, and there'll be a separate series of meetings. Those are really just an opportunity to get a little farther down. So these big visions and policies at the regional level, how do those get applied, or what do they look like at the county level, and specifically as we think about transportation decisions, economic development decisions at the county level. So stay tuned for information about those. So with that, I'll turn things over to Gianni, who's going to talk a little bit more about the regional vision.
I'm Gianni Longo.
Can I interrupt for just a second? Is there a sign-in sheet going around? Is everyone signed in? Just make sure that everyone gets a chance to sign in. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm Gianni Longo, and I'm delighted to be here. I know that with some of you had previous discussion about the relationship of the tribal lands and the Kuala boundary with the region and how they integrate into a regional vision. And so today we really are here to dig a little deeper in that and begin to be more specific about some of those relationships. And I think the first thing that we should talk about is what is a vision, particularly what is a regional vision and why a regional vision matters. In a very simple definition, it's an effort, a regional vision is an effort to bring together a diverse cross-section of leaders, special interest groups, and residents from all parts of the region to agree on a desired future. And then, after we do that, recommend how the future can be realized. And the reason why this is first begins to be important is that, as you well know, and you are a sovereign country, sovereign nation, is that at the regional scale, we don't have the mechanism to implement things. So, I'm sure within the boundaries, you have your protocols and your elected officials and so on. The same happens at the county level. The same happens at the municipal level. But there is no such a thing for the region. So, developing a regional vision is an effort to build some agreements that can then be voluntarily implemented so that we all work in the same direction. And regions are really complex entities, and particularly complex in this region because of the diversity of governments that we have, and the businesses, and the not-for-profit organizations, and the special interests, and of course, even residents. Every individual resident has an agenda. They want something. They chose to live here, and that's important to them. And each of these organizations are doing a terrific job. They're doing whatever their mission is, and they're implementing all kinds of tactics, strategies. They build projects, all of which, again, are all very important. But the point is that when you look at all of this from the perspective of the region, how do they fit into the region? And the question really to ask at this point is, does the region have a vision? I mean, are we working in the same direction? So the purpose of the regional vision is to make sure that we align all the relevant missions and the organizations that do this and work together so that we can accomplish shared goals. That's really what the regional vision is all about. And why does it matter is a critical question. Businesses, as you well know, do strategic planning all the time. And they try to figure out, what are the emerging challenges that are going to come up. They try to position themselves so that they can be competitive. I always like to use this analogy, but if you were in the buggy business at the turn of the last century, building these wonderful horse carriages and doing very well in their business, you would have been very shortly out of business if you did not foresee the coming of the Model T. Now, what is extraordinary from my perspective, and I've been doing this for 30 years, is how little strategic planning regions do. And obviously there are shared interests. I mean, roads are all shared. The economy tend to be commingled. There are broader interests in terms of quality of life issues and so on. But very few regions ask themselves the question, what do we want to be 5, 10, 15 years from now? What are the challenges that we're going to face that we need to begin to work toward today? And as I said, business do this all the time and rarely. So this opt-in is a great opportunity just because of that, just because it gives this region and the EBCI nation to think about the future and to plan for their future. And another critical thing that is important and makes regional vision important is if we don't do it, someone else will do it for us. Whether it is a governmental entity, bankers that don't provide loans for business, they can do it for us. Development that comes in and we don't like, they can do it for us. So all of these are forces that will change this region. And so why not prepare for that? And why not set forth what is important for us? What are the priorities? How is, in your case, the EBCI positioning these things? What do you want and how do you work within that regional vision? So opt-in is just this great opportunity and to take charge of this future as a region. And so far what we've done, and this is just a progress diagram, we've done a lot of analysis. All of this stuff is available on our website, which is Opt-InSWNC.org. All of this information is available, but we developed a baseline vision which has the basic data on land use, transportation, economy, population demographics, and that kind of stuff. We also conducted hundreds of stakeholder interviews, and in fact we had 2 of those sessions with the Vice Chief and several of you. And what we learned from that was a number of ideas. So this is a work in progress. We build in this vision. We're just off the basement, right? The baseline vision is the basement. Now we begin to come up off the ground, and we have organized these ideas that we collected, and we are conducting a series of meetings in the various parts of the region. There are 2 things that we develop what we call a draft regional vision framework, which you can also go online and find copies of. But I want to focus on today on what we heard. And I want to know from you, have a discussion with you of whether or not what we heard actually resonates to the cultures, the values, and the plans that you have, they are implementing. Do they resonate? If they don't, what are we missing? What do we need to add? So this is a brainstorm, halfway reacting what we have, and we are going to build this vision from the ground up. In fact, when we were trying to figure out how we're going to call all these things, all these ideas, and how we're going to organize them, we decided to call them pillars. Now, if you build a building, you need pillars that are going to sustain the roof and then create the building. So we are now at the beginning to build these pillars. And we have 5 pillars, and we will discuss each of them this afternoon. The first one is the place we are given. And really it's about your quite extraordinary natural and cultural resources. There are very few areas in this country that have so much of them. And how important are they? And how do we deal with them? Do we protect them? Or we say we have too much of them, and maybe we don't need to have as much? How do we relate to this quite extraordinary asset that you have? The second is obviously the economy, because without the economy, and we call it the economy we need, without the economy, obviously, very little can happen. And job creation has emerged as a very important issue, not only per se, because obviously jobs are very important per se, but also because from all that we hear, the region is suffering from a brain drain. Young people are moving away, and what do we need to do, or how important is it to retain those young people in this area? The places we make is about the man-made environment, including all the development patterns that we found throughout the region. And if there was one concept that came out in all the interviews that we had, was that this region and this side of the Smoky is very different from what you have to the north of you, the Gatlinburg and the Pigeon Forge. You are different. Is that important? Is that something that we want to preserve? How do we deal with that? Somebody said in one of the interviews, since reflecting the idea that you are on the quiet side of the Smokies, and is that an asset? Is that a liability? How do we deal with that? The fourth pillars is the ways we get around, which obviously has to do with transportation. And as Woody mentioned, a lot of the beginning of this effort was related to the discussion that has been taking place around the Corridor K. And then we have the quality of life that we expect, which is a kind of a catch-all, type of pillar, because obviously quality of life is important to everyone. And so those are the 5 pillars, and as I said, this is a work in progress. So we're raising from the foundation, we're raising the pillars that are going to make up really our regional vision. So where do we go from here? This is the 5th of this 8 public meetings that we're holding, and what I want to point out is that we're going to use all the information that you give us to build more of the pillars and of the visions. We will also develop scenarios that tell us, what ifs. What ifs? What if we do this? What if we do this in transportation, in the economy, and so on? And in February, we will come back, and you will be able to see more of the edifice that is this original vision. And then we will come back again in early spring, where we will have what we call a preferred scenario. And ultimately, we will have, probably in late May or early May, we will have a summit when we are going to ask people from the entire 7 counties and the EBCI to come and participate in a summit meeting to really ratify this vision, see the degree of support that we have in the region for this vision, which will be done using keypad technology, which is a way for lots of people to have a discussion, and then through the keypads they can tell us whether or not they support or don't support, or the degree of support of the vision. So that's the plan, that's what we're doing, and today really we are going to focus on the 5 pillars. The pillars of the environments, the place we are given, the economy we need, the place, which is the places we make, the way we get around, which is about transportation, and the quality of life. What we are going to do is each of you should have this sets of really ideas that we collected from the what we heard for each one of the pillars. I would like to go one pillar at a time. I know that you have different specialty, or you cover different parts of the 5 pillars, but I really would like to ask you to jump in with your perspective as we discuss each and every one of these pillars, and we are going to ask a number of questions, but the basic questions are 2. How do these ideas resonate with what's important in the Qualan boundary and in the tribal lands? And the second question is, what do we need to add to these ideas so that we have your input as we build this regional vision. So, very simple rules of the game. Yes?
Very simple rules. I saw the chief step in. I wanted to, if he's able, just to address the committee and the folks that are here real quick. He looks like he's tied up on something back there, but if you could just give him a moment, we'll see if we can catch him here. If we'll just stand down for a second. Ben, you want to see if he's able to? Yeah, you have a comment, Lynn? Oh, I'm sorry. I must be getting old, I can't hear. Tommy Snook, one of our tribal council members, I caught her out in the hallway and asked her to step in just a minute. Chief, you've met most of these folks before with the Opt-in initiative. Just wanted to ask you for any comments you might have on the planning effort that's underway, and of course it's far from finished. We have some talking points that have been prepared from other just the preliminary meetings around the region. Right. Not even sure if you've had a chance to look at these yet, but
I haven't seen all the detail. I mean, I've seen the summary of basically, where the focus is, but I'd be glad to make a couple comments. It's okay. Yeah, thank you guys for being here. We apologize. I think this meeting got canceled about a week or so ago, and I don't know exactly what happened there. But and I want to thank the Vice Chief for stepping up and representing the Eastern Band. I mean, he's long-time knowledge of the tribe, and so he understands a lot of the history and the various areas that we have to be focused on. But one of the things that I think is important, and I attended an event the other day up at Western. The Chancellor put it on, which had a regional focus. And I think, as you look at each one of these areas, whether it's the environment, the economy, transportation, et cetera, that as we move forward, not only as a tribe, but as a region, we have to have that overall focus. Because there's a lot of things, that affect, each one of our daily lives. And again, if we just looked at transportation, obviously, it's not just cars and trucks. We're now thinking about, railways. We're thinking about, airlines, and we're thinking about, so many things that bring people to and fro, again, Cherokee, but also the region. And so, looking at, each one of these issues from a so-called global perspective, I think is very important. And, as we've moved ahead as a tribe in the last, 10 years, that's one of the things, Vice, that you know very well, and the council, that we focused on, creating those new partnerships and not just, trying to carry the load ourselves, but bringing our county partners along, towns and municipalities, to help us with various projects. And again, whether it's a transportation project, a water and sewer infrastructure project, or an IT project, I mean, they all have to link, and everybody has to work in coordination. And I think that's one of the things that, as we look at Western North Carolina, that we're doing a better job of. But I still think that we can do a lot better job than what we're currently doing. So, but I do appreciate the work you guys are doing. I look forward to any particular involvement that you need me for in the future. So thank you.
Well, thank you, Chief. I know you've had a busy day today, and just thought we'd catch you. Oh, are you? Okay, well, we'll adjourn the meeting to come watch that. Well, thank you again, Chief. I asked Tommy if she had any comments. She said she did not at this point, but I want to thank Tommy. She's a long-term council member here, Paint Town community, and she sat through the original presentation. And so, with the projects that we have coming, and of course Cherokee County, the things that we've done here in Cherokee, Tommy's been involved in almost all of them. And so it's just an effort that we see that, and we can hear the ball players. I think that's the chief out there yelling, getting ready to play. But issuing the challenge, I guess. But as we look to what we've already accomplished, and then of course what we're going to hopefully continue to accomplish, we have to be good neighbors. We have to work regionally with what's happening. We certainly want Cherokee County involved in planning efforts. We certainly want to be conscious of what they have to offer us as far as infrastructure and those type things. But I think the bottom line is being good neighbors. As the chief has said, we have different opportunities, I think, in front of us, from broadband initiatives to transportation opportunities that have gone away over time. You know, the railways and those type things. Of course, there's some discussion now about extending the runways that are in Cherokee County down at Andrews Airport for the opportunity of the new casino that's coming in. So the effort, I think, is very timely.
Right.
And it sounds like, in just looking at some of the pillars that have been talked about, they seem to be right on point with some of the issues. I'm sure that if we all just sit and think about it a little, that yeah, these are things that we want to see continue. The beauty of the region, economic opportunities, better transportation, internet access, all those things that other communities have. And again, being somewhat a rural area, there are impediments of just the natural terrain that we've had to work with over the many years. So, and again, I didn't mean to get sidetracked a little bit, but we certainly want to and welcome any further comments or questions at this point that you'd have concerning the pillars of the opportunities, the regional vision. We have folks here that hopefully can answer from a tribe's perspective on how we think they're going to affect us. So I'll turn it back over to you. Thank you.
Thanks. Well, let's take one thing at a time. Let's talk about the environment. And essentially what has emerged from all this discussion is, one, there is almost unanimous recognition that your natural resources are this absolutely great asset that you have. So then the question that is, do we need to protect it? Do we have enough protections? And if we need to do additional protections, what are those? The second concept is that there is a really strong, deep relationship between the natural resources, the physical environment in which this region exists, and its culture, and is reflected in the arts and the craft, as well as in the culture itself. And obviously there is a growing interest in the South Appalachian culture, in the Native American heritage. So how do we fold those things into the vision? What are the key important things that we need to consider from a tribal standpoint? Then, of course, there is the fact that the natural resources are key to the economy. And what are the initiative of elements that we need to address for that relationship between the natural resource and the economy to take place? Any ideas? Any comment? Any reactions to this first set of these ideas? Do they resonate? Are they important to the tribal lands? And if not, what do we need to add?
Vice Chief, I wanted to make a few comments. I think you ought to go down and watch the stickball game. You could really learn about our culture. It's wonderful. You ought to go see it. While you're here, you may not ever have another opportunity. Have you ever seen stickball? Oh, it's wonderful. You ought to go down to the field and see it.
What time's the game?
It's starting.
Oh, well.
Oh, there you go.
We seem to have...
I have got to go, so I've got people playing. But anyway, it's nice to be included. And this gentleman here, he probably knows more about our region than anybody on the boundary. He's been here longer. He's probably got, 20-plus years in tribal government.
You saying I'm old, huh?
No, I'm not saying he's old. He started when he was very young. But he's very knowledgeable, and he was in forestry. But when he was sitting around the table, I sat the first term with him, he was our thinker, and he still is. So he's very knowledgeable, and he can help you with a lot. So, but I'm glad to have been a part of this just briefly. And if there's any way Tribal Council can help you, let us know.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Well, thank you, Tommy, for those kind words. It's You know, I just looked over some of these pretty quickly. You know, that our tribal land base is small in comparison to the region. I think we have 56,000 acres of land. Of that, I think 45,000 is what's commercial timberland. Now, at one time, our commercial forest was pretty vibrant. I mean, it was you know, harvest, logging, those type things, and over the past 20 years or so, we, as forester, I was the forester here for the tribe, we slowed down the harvest. Things have been overused, over-harvested, and so we at one time were a very large contributor to the regional fiber base, the raw material coming out. Anymore, we're not so much, but we still have issues of gathering of medicinal plants. We still have issues of the ramps that, you know, in the springtime, we have issues of just hunting and fishing, which we've worked very hard over the past several years to enhance on our tribal lands. And of course, part of that initiative, not only for tribal members to, and particularly in the fishing industry, we've always had a strong commercial put and take for permitting and those type things, been very successful. We've not looked at necessarily enhancing it for other consumers other than tribal members, I would say, from our hunting resource. And I think that's just because of our limited land base, and also, you know, the population we have here, our people, this is our land, right. And certainly we want to protect and enhance what we have. So efforts have gone into that pretty heavily over the past, well, 10 years. I know that the chief and I have been in office, but it's always been an ongoing reverence, if you will. Our people have looked at the land maybe as other folks have not. This is, the land is who makes us who we are. Cherokee people, we came from the land. This was regionally, you know, before removal, those type things, it was ours from here to, you know, 7 states that were included in our Aboriginal territory. So the tie to the land, to our people, is something that just it's just sacred to us. It's just who we are. When we talk about development and those things that come in and affect the land, the water, the air, I believe that the tribe has been very accommodating in some ways. Now, with our historical sites, archaeological sites, we've worked very hard to protect those, and we will continue to work hard to protect those. And they affect some of the county planning efforts and some of the regional efforts that you're going to see within the 7 counties. We have to protect who we are, and of course, who we are comes from where we came from. There are town sites, village sites, in each one of these counties that we're working hard to make sure they're protected on into the future. So we certainly don't want to be seen as obstructionist, but we also want to be understood that we and our ancestors were here first, and we are going to protect those sites at all costs because it's who we are. It's who we came from, and that's where it's at. So we truly hope that we don't come across as being too mean about it, but to us, it's reality. It's who we are. So we look at you know, natural resources and forestry issues, and we look at how do we enhance those, or how do we use them better, utilize them, how do we, from a regional standpoint, how do we get innovative, bring in other opportunities that maybe aren't just fiber-based. You know, you aren't just extracting necessarily, but you are enhancing and maybe modifying to some extent. So I'm not sure that the bullet points here address that. and I'd be interested to see on what larger scale that, or other dynamics that are at play that other folks think might be able to come into the region that could offer other type forest products. Now, with the federal lands that are involved in the region, I guess the question and for our public would be, what have been their involvement into this effort? Because we have national park lands in the 7 counties, we have Forest Service lands, we probably have state forest lands. What's been their involvement? Because again, what they do on those public lands necessarily could affect what we're able to do as a people through our treaties and our history.
And what would be, well, first of all, answering the question, yes, we are in contact. We have met with the various agencies that are involved in that. And as you can see, the knowledge and the awareness that the natural resources are so key, and the cultural resources, the history of your people, as well as the history of the people in the other counties, that has been so much related and forged by the mountains, the place. I don't fish and I don't hunt, but I eat rams. So I'm delighted that you mentioned the kind of things that are really important to your culture and so on. What are the key, I would like to turn that question back to you in terms of what are the most important things that you need for the federal agencies that are involved in the protection of this land to happen? What are the key things what are the key things that you don't want to happen in the federal lands? Anybody can jump in. We need to hear more and more. As I mentioned, this is a building, is the beginning of a building. We're just off the foundations.
I think our challenge has always been with federal lands, there doesn't seem to be any common ground. It's either protect them and nobody has access, or they feel like they have to open the gate and give away the store. I think our history has illustrated very clearly that we can do both. We can live here and protect the mountains and still harvest all the gifts and bounty that the mountains provide, and we can manage those resources so that we don't deplete them. I think that's been one of the challenges the tribes had with federal protections on lands, and in some state and national forest issues as well. We're working with other groups like Land Trust for Little Tennessee to build community-based forestry. I think that's what I'd like to see with federal lands, is community-based forestry, where we harvest some things, we do burning to protect the forest, we can hunt, we can gather, and within limits, so that we aren't depleting those resources.
And this, Lynn, what you said really is exactly what we need to hear. These initiatives or programs or the desires or even the lines in the sand that you want to set for this discussion. So thank you for that. How about farming? Is farming a part of the economy of the tribal land, and how big it is and how important it is?
Small garden plots are basically what we have, I think, in existence. Now there are, as our, I guess, economy moved away from farming and growing tobacco and those type of things, it seemed that when I was growing up, everybody had a plot of tobacco, or you knew someone that always grew tobacco, and it was a cash crop. And so then I think as that generation got older and markets changed, the whole norm of use of tobacco changed, then that cash crop has gone away. I don't know of any tobacco grown commercially on the reservation lands at all. And that's probably been for the past several years that there's been none. And that's a factor of large markets, large, tobacco buyouts and all those things that came about with tobacco company settlements and those type of things. And the larger areas, it seems that we had large gardens in, now there's homes in. You know, it was the more accessible areas at one time to farm, but then they became more prone to, okay, my kids need homes, and okay, we're not going to grow the garden this year, so yeah, put you a house out there, and that's taken some of our cropland out of production. I think you know, the efforts that we've made underway to buy back some of the larger farms that are in proximity to us, the Gadua farm, the Ferguson farm we call it, the Coopers Creek farm. Those are large open areas that we have an initiative implemented several years back to allow people, if they want a garden spot, again, we will give them an acre, half acre, whatever they think they want for a family garden. Some of them are large enough to where they can have hay areas on, some of them large enough to have corn, you know, 5 to 10 acres. And so there's been a emphasis made on healthier eating, grow your own crops, that sort of thing, right, that we have a lot of participation in. And you know, through the garden initiative, I know the chief started, he gives out garden kits each spring, and it's amazing how much you can grow in a very limited amount of property. We have a composting operation here on tribal property that for local residents, as well as some commercial sales, that we can provide compost for a very small area that gets very productive pretty quick.
So really it's similar to the community forestry that you were talking about. The emphasis really is on community farming in these small plots and this kind of things.
Yep. So the land use has just changed, and of course I'm sure in several other the regional areas you'll find some of the same things.
Yeah, it is a trend. It's true. It is a trend, and perhaps with the exception of Cherokee County, that has much more flat land. Graham County is very similar. It's just family type of farming that is like a second job. It's not the primary economic function. Right. Let's move on to the economy. Okay. And you know, first and foremost, I mean, there is a recognition that the Kuala boundary is a powerful economic force in this region. All right, there's no denying of that. So there's like a baseline. So this is the kind of things that have come out. One is that there is not a kind of a regional identity that one, from economic development standpoint, that one could market. And so that it's very important. And again, I'm asking for you to react to that. What we heard is that it's very important to develop this regional identity, so that the vision should really emphasize, you know, some kind of a brand or regional identity that will be, and then marketing that identity at this region. This as a unit. Now you have obviously your own priority from an economic development standpoint, but those seems to be the key to the economic well-being of this community. Excluding jobs, because job creation seems to be more a quality of life issue at this point. There's a lot of pressure from that area, as opposed to just, you know, the fact that maybe we don't have enough job, or we don't have enough of the workforce that could actually meet the jobs that we have. Your reaction? Do we need an identity, or do we have an identity?
Well, I'm gonna ask our young lady from planning to step in here just a minute, but I think the regional identification that the way I would see it, you know, is basically been tourism based, whatever that may be. You know,
for the whole region.
Yeah, for the whole region. I mean, bits and pieces and parts, and we know at times, you know, Clay County may have something that Cherokee County may have something they're marketing. Graham County. I mean, they each have tried to create a niche, if you will. The Highway 28 to Tell the Dragon, or down around John Campbell Folk School, or down around Hayesville, Blairsville, what they're doing down there.
Yeah, those are niches, right, that you have, yeah.
So You know, from a regional standpoint, I'm sure there have been attempts at probably regional marketing initiatives. How well they're working, I don't know. I'm sure they could be contacted to see, but you know, I'd like to hear from our planning department maybe just some ideas on the overall the question. You know.
Well, and what we've been hearing, we're trying to verify. You know, we heard from a lot of people, but you know, to have another 6 or 7 points of view, it's very important, or 50 if you have a public meeting, that really there is no entity that is marketing this region. That's what we hear. And should there be? And how does the Cherokee culture and heritage fit in all this? I mean, this is your land, as you said. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a real connection here.
Mm-hmm. Hi. So I'm still learning about all this planning stuff, but as far as regionally goes, a regional marketing type of initiative, I think regionally something that we all do have in common is the place that we live in, is the environment. I think we could all sort of come together on that aspect. And then the whole Appalachian culture does involve us as well as everyone else. So capitalizing on that would probably be a good way to go, in my opinion.
Do you agree that there is nobody actually marketing even those very basic aspects that it should be kind of a no-brainer, really?
For the whole entire 7 counties, mm-hmm. coming together to market as one, not that I know of.
Specifically for
like little pockets, like Larry was saying, little pockets of marketing, that sort of thing, but not a united front.
If we were to, I'm challenging you, okay?
Sure.
If we were to look deeply and profoundly to your culture and your religion, is there any hook that could become the way we market this region? I mean, what is the role of the EBCI in all of this? You have a fundamental economic role, mm-hmm. you have a fundamental cultural role. You know, how do we make that part of the way we identify and market this region? And the opposite question would be, could you really market this region without taking that into account?
Right.
I think when you're looking at the marketing aspect of it, there's marketing the festivals and the events and the cultural connections and the natural beauty, and you can also think about marketing the region in the sense of economic development in terms of attracting individuals for jobs or for retirement, a great place to retire, a great place to live and work and play. So I think that you have to define that focus very narrowly when you're talking about marketing strategies, and what is the marketing strategy in terms of place, in terms of the environment and the Cherokee connection. I think that it's important for county leaders and city leaders to look to the Eastern Band for that guidance. I think that we've had experiences in the past where the counties will attempt to go out on their own and market Cherokee, Cherokee history and their connection. They'll see the success of our cultural attractions and the things that we are doing here. I want to make sure that the region is aware that we have a rich history throughout, and we would like to be consulted on those things and to help drive those events. I think that we do have a unique perspective here, is that you have Cherokee people and their ancestral homeland telling the Cherokee story. And so I think that's going to be an important point moving forward, is that, we would love to have the opportunity for our guests to experience a Cherokee experience in Macon County. But to your point, in the document, we want that to be authentic, and we want to have some level of consultation and insight into that. And also that we have the resources, the financial resources, the research resources, the historical resources to be able to put something into play that will complement what we're doing here on the boundary throughout the entire region.
And what would be, I'm asking a what-if question. I mean, when you do a vision, you can try to fix what doesn't work, or you can try to think really big and see, big picture things. What would be the vehicle for that consultation, for that dialogue to take place? Is that an entity that is already in place? Is that an entity that should be created? And if an entity, such entity is created, would the BCI take the leadership of that group? What is your feeling? Let's think big. I mean, we don't just want to fix a pothole that doesn't work. Any sense?
Well, I think that's an interesting point, and that's something that we've struggled with internally also, is we have individual cultural attractions. They have their own boards of directors. They have their own history of operations. I mean, many of our cultural attractions are 40, 50, 60 years old, celebrating that level of anniversary. And it's something that I sit on the board of directors for the Cherokee Historical Association. It's something that we continually struggle with, is how do we deliver an authentic product, but in a way that meets a 21st century customer. Knowing that individuals are going hiking in the Great Smoky Mountains National Park, and likely in their cars or in their backpacks they're carrying an iPad and an iPhone, and they have access to this technology, but they want a real kind of Appalachian experience. And you know, I'm leaving my iPad in the car and going and spending a week in a tent, but I still have access to technology. So how do we deliver that message through technology in a way that complements what we're doing on the ground, if you will? That we have their attention before they arrive, we're able to give them an experience, and then we allow them to follow up on that experience with an additional level of detail. I think that there are existing organizations that could be used to start that consultation. Mm-hmm. The Greater Cherokee, Tourism Council was kind of formed out of a partnership between what is known as the cultural partners, and then things like the Chamber of Commerce and also our Commerce Division. So I think there are several places in which to start where there is a network of individuals, but that's an interesting point, is if we're going to have a regional presence in terms of exhibiting and giving people a Cherokee experience, then what does that look like, and who's taking the lead?
And the EBCI is willing to play a role in there.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Great.
I guess I would ask the gal from Southwestern Commission, if she has any comments on this, or are there any thoughts from you or your office on how that could be accomplished? I think I'm not aware of any organization that's meeting this need at this point, but as Corey said, it's a very interesting question, because I think to get to that point, that I believe I can see a lot of heads around this table nodding, that we certainly want it to be done correctly and authentically and with reverence and respect, but we want that input too. You want to come up and maybe have a comment on that, if you would?
My name's Sarah Graham. I'm the Director of Planning for the Southwestern Commission. Hi, Kathy. We've met before and worked together. We don't currently serve that direct purpose in the region, but as things change and we are in place as a almost 40-year-old regional economic development commission, as the state shifts and funding shifts towards economic development efforts across the state, we hope to be in place as an established agency that can fill that role. That's my main comment, I suppose, is that we value our partnership with the tribe. We've been working with local governments for many years, and we feel like we're in a good position to take on those responsibilities, excuse me, as the funding and organization across the state changes towards making those kinds of efforts. We do feel like working together regionally is the best for everyone at this point, and we're in place and established and ready to be that partner.
Do you know of any other regional areas in North Carolina that have come together, 2 or 3 counties, for a purpose or similar to what we're talking about here? Or are there other models to look at?
Well, a lot of, marketing tends to happen on county by county levels through chambers of commerce and such. I think out here in the West, we're a little better positioned to work together because of our rural nature. We're sort of used to reaching across jurisdictional lines. We're not really competing with one another for business so much as we are recognizing that the more folks that come to the region will benefit all of us.
Okay.
And I want to say something else. Those are 5 pillars. There is a 6th pillar that we're not ready yet to really, is not ready for prime time, and is how do we implement a regional vision when we have one? And this discussion that we're having right now, and what Sarah added to it, is just critical to that. Because I've probably done more vision than anybody alive. And I'm old enough to say that, and I did the first one, so I know it's a fact. But there's absolutely no reason to go to an effort like this one if we're not ready to go through an implementation phase. And I think that that's where the rubber hits the road. That's why I was asking that question. And it's extraordinary to hear that that you more than want to be part of that discussion. And I think perhaps it's even more than just consultation, is actually helping deliver that product, helping deliver that.
Well, we have vehicles in place that can certainly help the counties through Sequoia Foundation. I mean, we've got opportunities to help them enhance their offerings, if you will, that truly enhance our story.
Right.
When we were in Hayesville talking about the casino project, there are historical sites in the Hayesville area that, I mean, you look at what you could do, not just from the casino and how it's presented, but those other opportunities for people to come in who would want a half-a-day trip or a day trip to look at other things that are in the region and help tell our story through that. So, as Corey said, you've hit the nail on the head. We're willing to work with the counties to get to that point because we want our story told correctly and respectfully, and for all generations to come.
Right. And that is, at the end of the day, that is the most critical question. When we have a vision, how we're going to implement it, how we're going to have a discussion all the time about that. And you mentioned about other examples. I have done several of these visions, and all of them, at the end of the day, you can develop the vision, but when people ask me, I say, what's next? After the vision, there is leadership. And it has to be a leadership that really, truly represents the various entities. And there has to be private sector leadership, there has to be public sector leadership, there has to be the support, you mentioned the Sequoia Foundation, of not-for-profits, the philanthropic sector. So, because at the end, it has to be a common effort with, as I tried to explain with that diagram, where all the lines lined up, so that we all go in the direction that we want. That doesn't say that what everybody else is doing is wrong, but if we line up those resources, sky's the limit. That's the idea. Any more comments about the economy that we need? Let's talk about places, which is basically a discussion about land use, development patterns. What is important here? Particularly when we relate land use both to transportation and the natural environment. There is a bottom line that I would like to submit here, and is presented in the baseline vision that is online, and that is that this region has been consuming land at a pace that is far higher than the population growth. A lot of your land is constrained one way or the other, either because it's in federal hands or state lands, or protected one way or the other. You have slopes that make it very challenging to build on those slopes. And so at the end of the day, there has been a tremendous amount of land being converted from rural to development. There's nothing wrong with that, except perhaps the pace at which is happening, which seems to be quite brisk. And are there any thoughts about how do we deal with that? We know that growth is going to occur, and should we continue developing the same way that we have? Should we consider different ways of developing? How important is that? How important is to manage that growth so that we can keep the tribal character, the tribal culture in your case, or the small town character, and Robbinsville and some of the smaller communities, Stacoa Village. I mean, those are wonderful little places. How important it is in this growth versus management, and how important it really is to remain the quiet side of the Smokies versus what's happening north of here in Sevierville and in Pigeon Forge and all that stuff. Your thoughts?
Well, I think part of the dilemma is that we, as you say, the more folks that come into the region, not only help Cherokee, but they help the counties, the more people coming through, but there's also a downside to that. Mm-hmm. More pollution, more needs, more use of resources, all those things. So where's the balance? We talk about what can we do to enhance our retail opportunities here in Cherokee. And to us, they're real. We want our people to have good jobs and, folks with good educations to come back and help us if we decide to create them to be able to work here and enjoy our region, enjoy our reservation, mm-hmm. and being back home. So we hear it also internally with tribal members of, okay, we want this, but we also want that. And so that's the rub of right. Society, any society, I guess, and being a limited area, we have to be very strategic on what we try to locate here, because we can affect in a lot of ways what happens here. We can dictate that in some instances, but we also want to be, I guess, as broad-minded as possible about what's a good fit and what's not a good fit. From a regional perspective, I think that, and particularly in Cherokee County, I'll use that as an example with the casino coming in.
Right.
They're going to have some challenges, and they're also going to have some great opportunities. I think on some of those surrounding properties there, whether they're in the city of Murphy or in the county, to really have some smart growth opportunities that will give them the opportunity to set a standard that will not detract from the beauty of the area, and will again provide those good jobs and good opportunities for the people that live there. So it's just a constant challenge, I guess, to look at the offsets, look at the downstream as far as possible, to get those jobs, get the opportunity, but at the same time protect what you have.
And of course you have lands throughout the region, so
right.
It's not
5
just
counties.
the Kuala boundary, but the Kuala boundary seems to have the largest critical mass of land. Do you feel that you have the tools now within the Kuala boundary to really create that balance? And are there tools that we could look at and see that maybe they can be applied more regionally? Priorities, tools that you might have. How do you keep the balance, in other words? Or
we argue a lot.
How would you dig? How would you dig?
And we converse a lot. How's that for an answer? Okay. Everything we do here, boundary land is discussed pretty heavily. I mean, and as it should be. I mean, again, the land belongs to everyone that's a tribal member.
Right.
And so everybody's a stakeholder.
Right.
So I think through the council resolutions that have to be presented to the public, discussions that normally take place, public hearings and those type of things. We try to get all the input we can before we move forward. You know, it's just our system, and it can be cumbersome sometimes, and if you're working with developers, it can be, you know, a detraction from them. They want to do things a little quicker, but again, trying to look downstream on what the results are going to be. Not sure it would work for other parts of our region.
Yeah.
But it's a system we have, and it works for us, and you know, so.
And if you look
from a planning standpoint, or
please jump in.
From Corey or you guys, if you.
I know the vice chief is here, but everybody can jump in.
Well, you know, they're broad questions. I mean, with broad answers, and certainly.
If you look downstream, as far as you can see, everyone, are there issues that you see coming up? For example, you mentioned the trout fishing and the quality of the water and so on. Is water quality an issue? That, you know, as we develop, every square mile of this country has this problem. You know, we have to balance that. Is the quality of the air something that affects your forests, affects that? Do you see any issue that is related to development that is down there, is downstream, that we need to start thinking about?
I think, and I see Kathy nodding, but I think from just a land mass opportunity, we have bought several pieces of property, and our initiative is to get those properties into tribal trust so we have control. And a lot of the reasons we bought them, some are cultural, but then there's also housing opportunities, because the areas that we're putting housing in now is more expensive, more road construction, more possibly detrimental. And so what I see down the road is that the need to purchase more property, get that land into trust, and then again, the same uses would apply that we're putting to the land now, but I think it takes pressure off of other areas that probably need a little rest, need a little breathing room, if you know what I mean. Folks looked at some of the studies, and the population growth that we have is pretty steady. The land is not getting any bigger necessarily, so I think that's going to be one issue that we really have to keep our eye on, and do all we can to get more property in tribal ownership and trust. Kathy, you had a comment?
I do. You asked if we could see any concerns and potential problems coming up with this economic development that everyone has agreed that we all need to help promote. What we see in public transportation is that you have the economic development, and it helps tremendously in your community and the surrounding communities. But over time, the workforce is not as great as the need is. So what we've seen just here is that the casino and other businesses will go outside the country and bring in groups of foreign workers. So once the foreign workers get here, there's no place for them to stay. There's no rentals for citizens of this country. And we've seen locally our rent. It would be interesting to go back 10 years and say what rent was then and what rent is now. But where we pick people up are campgrounds and motel rooms, and we see rather large groups of people living in a motel room or into someone's home. Looking ahead not just zoning, but rental laws. People, I could probably rent out a barn to 35 people from Jamaica if I had such. You know, and there's nothing in place that says that I have to be nice that I've seen. And it's not that people are deliberately taking advantage, it's just that there is a tremendous need for people to work. And at first there's a lot of people that can fill those, but then they're driving maybe an hour and a half, 2 hours to get to work, and then gas goes up. They have an opportunity to get a job closer to home, and they're no longer your employee. So, but yet your clients, your customers, are lined up out the door. So what are you going to do?
Right.
So I think paying some attention to housing, rentals is important.
Some kind of regulation that deals with a particular issue. And that's a perfect sequitur to the next two pillars. One is transportation, because you touched upon them briefly, and we're going to talk a little bit more about that. And the other one is the basic quality of life issue, which has to do with housing availability, housing affordability, and all that stuff. Getting into transportation, essentially, we hear that of all the 7 counties, Graham County has the biggest issue in terms of being accessible. And there's no way to get there. And is that an issue? Corridor K, no matter how it's built, not just the 4-lane or whatever, no matter how it's built, that entity can help in some of the mobility that exists. But then you touched upon briefly about maybe alternatives, public transportation among the various counties, so that mobility of workforce maybe can be achieved other than just by driving from point A to point B. The feeling that we're getting from all the interviews and so on is always the same. We do want to have more mobility, we want to have more access, we want to be able to go to Georgia and to Tennessee and to South Carolina, as fast as we can, but we want to do it so that it doesn't affect the mountains and so on. So the choices seem to be a lot toward improving what you have, because it kind of strikes the balance. How reasonable is to think that there could be a more efficient way to move people around, either through public transportation or alternatives? There was an article yesterday in the USA Today that said that the millennial, the new generation, just don't like to drive. There's been a decline in people on the roads. So is this a time to really reflect on mobility, public transportation, needs of that kind in this region? I know I'm putting you on the spot a little bit.
Barrick has the answer.
I think dealing with transportation and being a part of workings with the new transportation bill, that's been the question, is the future of transportation. And it is a change. This country's seeing a lot more people moving back into urban areas where, the 80s and some of those times we were seeing people moving out to the suburbs. More people are wanting to move back into to the urban areas. They're not wanting the big gigantic houses and the big yards to take care of. And what that leads to is that when folks look to travel, they're looking for that need for public transportation. You're having more people that are in, say, my generation and that might not even own a vehicle anymore. Husband and wife own a bike, and that's how they get to where they are. If they don't use a bike, they use public transportation. So when they get here, do we rent a car, or they're looking at more of an area that's connected, that they can, if they did rent a car, it's still, let me go here, I can park here, I can get out, I can take my bike, I can take whatever, we can go all around town, we can walk, we can do this, we can do our shopping, we can eat, we can do that. The problems that we face in this area, throughout Indian country as a whole, but this area in general, is because of our remoteness and how we're set up here is, there's not an easy way to get from here to Silva. There's not really an easy way to get from here to, say, Asheville, which is the next largest, because there's not that public transportation that would take you maybe there on a consistent basis. So it's how do we connect, and I think it goes back to the economy, and how do we make it more of a community that people want to come, and when they come to these areas, whether it be Robbinsville, whether it be Murphy, whether it be Cherokee, where it's kind of an all-inclusive type of deal, that it's easy for them to get around, it's easy for them to do shopping, it's easy for them to get the basic needs. And that's a lot of people, you want to revitalize downtowns and get away from the big box stores and everybody going out, and there's a huge Walmart here and a huge Target and everything. People are getting more focused into wanting to spend times in downtown areas where they can walk from shop to shop to shop to shop, and they're not having to. My parents for years owned craft shops in this town, and it was we were craft shop in downtown, craft shop up here by Snook Village, we had a craft shop in Dillsboro, and there was these areas, but it was never set up for them to go from shop to shop. Really, it was almost like everybody wanted parking in the front of your store so you could pull in, they could get there, go to that store, then they could go out and get in their car, and then they would drive on down the road, and then they'd pull in maybe to another store, instead of saying, oh, well, how about I could park here and then I can go and just go to all the stores, or however, because, and it was more of we weren't ever a unified front of saying, we want everybody to go to all the stores. It was I want everybody to come to my store, and I don't care if you go to anybody else's store. And it got to that point where every store had everything that the other store had, because you wanted to try to make sure you could keep them there, whereas to making it more of a variety. And so that's why there's more, I think, a more push towards having better public transportation. And that was one of the big fights with the new highway bill, that there was a lot of people pushing to do away with transit and do away with transit services, because it was losing so much money. These urban areas were losing money in transit and this and that, and it was like, well, it's all good, but you're not looking at the whole picture. Go back and look at the rural transit systems and see how much that's affecting, from here. I could probably count at least probably 24 people that I know of that are either tribal employees and or casino employees that are tribal members, that without Kathy's service would not be working, because they could not get from their home to work and back home, that her service provides to them. And that's what I think a lot of people were in the urban areas were missing, that big picture to say, well, how will this decision affect, the people? Graham County has a tremendous amount of people that probably use their public transit system, and some of these, because of the remoteness of the areas where we're at, if you live way out in Stokoe or you live way up in the Big Cove community, you can't just walk out the door and walk all the way to town and go to Food Line and go to, the dollar store and places like that, and the post office, because you're looking at a 30-mile round tripper to try to be walking that. That service provides you that avenue. And trying to work here as the connectivity of all of our greenways and trying to make it connect the whole town of Cherokee, the cultural area, the casino area, and then the downtown areas, connecting all of those, trying to get more, accessible for bikes. Kathy had touched on the fact that there's a lot of the foreign workforce Well, a lot of those folks come from areas where they're accustomed to riding bikes and having that avenue of a mode of transportation. That right now around here, there's no way I would want to turn someone, one of my family members or a friend of mine loose to ride a bike. I just think that they're actually going to be safe on some of the roadways here. And so I think that we're trying to get that focus back, and urban areas are seeing it a lot more, but it's starting to spill over into that because, like you said, we're starting to be able to diversify and offer jobs that may bring people from, say, an Atlanta area, a Charlotte area to come in here because I want to get out of kind of the big city way of things, but when I get to that area, I still kind of want some of those basic needs that I can, I want the easy mobility around town and everything like that. And, where, you might get to a family too that's a one-car family now instead of, pulling up and there's 7 cars in the driveway because everybody had to have a car or you had to have 2 cars and stuff. It's like we've got one because that we need that maybe one mode to get us wherever, but everything else we can go, and it's kind of right here.
So, big issue, particularly the regional scale, because you identify, in a second, Kathy, you identify the issues of mobility within the communities, and which goes hand to hand to the previous issues of the kind of land use that you have, or the kind of development pattern that allows people to walk or bike and so on safely and so on. And then the issue how you connect the various, because you're a multipolar region. You don't have like the big city in the middle. They might have, the rails stretching out and that kind of stuff. So it's like a dual problem. One, how you get people moving within the communities, and then how you connect Stacoa with Cherokee or with Hayesville and so on. Sorry, Kathy.
I've been in transportation since 1986, and the state of North Carolina repeatedly has come up with regionalize the transit systems, because you have the corridor running from Clay County to Buncombe County. So every few years there's this huge effort to get us all to say, okay, we'll drive our client from Clay County and we'll stop and pick up all along the way, and we'll take them on to Buncombe County, and then we'll turn and bring everybody back and meet you, and you can take them home. So the original passenger from Clay County is going to have to get on at 4 o'clock in the morning and get dropped off last. And when all that's pointed out, everyone says, oh yeah, okay, well maybe, okay. And then it goes away, and then it comes back every few years, and so in some of the states, when the vice chief asked if there was some areas where it had been successful, there are some transit systems that have joined together with surrounding counties, and it's not 7, it's 2, and they're right next to each other, and there are cities in there. Those have been pretty successful. There are funding rewards for them that we cannot get. So once again, it goes away and then it comes back again. So the casino called a few years ago and said, gas is $4 a gallon, and we're having people, like Barrick was saying, the husband and wife have 1 car, they have 2 jobs. So one of them just quit because they can't do this. They're from Asheville, so please come and help us. So we met and we discussed and strategized, and they did surveys, and the survey that they did came back the quickest and with the most responses of any survey that their HR department had done. And it was, yes, absolutely. I would do anything. I would get to a bus, and if you brought me to work and took me home again, yes, I would ride it. Yes, I would pay a certain amount. And then gas dropped. the counties came. They were all excited about it. They asked if they would do some job fairs in their counties where factories had just closed. And then when we pointed out to them that if you have a job fair, the people who have no transportation can't come to the job fair. So let's think outside the box. You know, we have two types of passengers, and that's true here and all around us, and New York City. And that is those that want to ride with us and those that have to. So when we are planning all of this, how do we get both types of passengers? The ones that want to have more resources, and they want the system designed around them. The ones that have to perhaps need a different type of system. So it's really hard. And a lot of times people don't think until after the building is built, and they think, we need bus stops. We need places for these people to wait on the bus.
Right.
You know, it gets cold outside and it rains and it's windy. So, and then they call us, you know, and even housing projects. So, you know, and then if I get more people and I have bigger buses, how do I get into little driveways? So it takes everybody sitting down and thinking together. And you cannot leave it up to elected officials, present company accepted, because sometimes they don't get elected again, so they're carrying the ball and they're saying, get on board with this idea, and then, you know, 2 years later, they're not there. So it has to come from some other body that will continue on with this. The other thing I wanted to say is that as fleet managers, we produce vehicle emissions, and we're aware of that, and we want to protect the resources that we have. And it's very difficult to do that, and you'd think it would be easy. So if we attract the type of visitor that wants to come in and they have a hybrid car, they can't because there's no fueling station. So we try to get a grant that would transport people through the park and get on a shuttle bus. And I had to close that because I had no other groups that would partner with me to promote it. And to me, that was kind of a drawback, you know. Right. We thought with the air quality being an issue in the park that we could do this and it would be a really good service. And it was a struggle.
When you see other entities, you're talking about the federal government, you're talking about tourist-related companies, or both?
Both. Even the funding source that gave us the money, they had no clue because this was not a roads and highway project, but it came from them, and they didn't even have a report form for us to draw down the money. We had to invent one.
Right.
It was just slow going, I guess. So if we want to go out and pick up larger groups of people in larger vehicles, then we need to do some thinking about how we're going to do a better air quality while we're at it.
And there will be almost an on-demand type of service, also very specific from point A to point B.
I hesitate to say yes, because in our area, you have to have a combination. You cannot set up a system that would work in Charlotte, but this bus is going to be here at this time and go here, and that's it. You have to have demand response. You have to have, it's different.
And
I have a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
Good. When I remember as a kid, we used to catch the bus over in Franklin. We'd go from Franklin to Atlanta, or we'd go from Franklin to Waynesville, Asheville, and on to other parts of the country. And so, thinking regionally, I've wondered, why did those bus services disappear, and is there a way to revive that kind of service?
I don't know about reviving it. I know that, and this has happened all over rural America, that Greyhound and Trailways have pulled out a lot. The closest station to us is Asheville. There used to be a bus stop regularly in Maggie Valley, which is pretty far away from Hayesville. So I've heard that stop has closed down, and now you have to get to Asheville, which is really, really hard on, and the foreign workers ask us every time it's time for them to return, they have to catch an airplane in Charlotte or Atlanta. Can we please take them, because they can't get back. So it's really difficult. I don't know what it would take to ask them to not start up again, but if there was a central point to where the transit systems could run, perhaps that would be the answer. But to tell you the truth, I don't even have a clue as to how to get in touch with the CEO of Greyhound or Trailways, or I don't think they're going to answer the phone if I call. So,
but what I'm hearing is that
that's why you need to
given the changing, given these changes,
I love you.
Given the changing trends in how people are moving around, and the notion that Derek talked about, that people like to also walk and bike and do all those things. What I'm hearing is that thinking long terms, thinking really outside of the box, that the public movements, the public transportation, whether it is for the people that must take it, or whether it is for the people that want to take it, is very much part of the solution here. Okay. I think we pretty much covered everything. The only other issue that I would like to address very briefly is, and you mentioned it actually, Kathy, is the one of this issue of workers that cannot find housing, affordable housing, and so on. And we heard at previous meetings that you do have programs that deal with that the EBCI is very proactive about dealing with addressing the issues of affordability and workers' house and that kind of stuff. Is there anything else that we want to add to that component, which is a quality of life component at the end of the day?
Well, I know that we did a 60-unit tax credit housing opportunity. Outside developer leased the property, went through the North Carolina Housing Agency, got tax credit opportunity. I've always been a proponent, let's spend someone else's money instead of ours. And it's about a $5.5 million project, 60 units, probably, it's running 100% occupancy, and we think that the families that are there, I would say 90% are tribal members or tribal member married families. They probably saw opportunity, and as Kathy said, even in some of our own homes, we have 2 or 3 generations living in a house. They took advantage of that. Our people did. We think there's a need for more of that type, and it's dependent on income and opportunities for transit, those type things to access them pretty handily. Land, again, finding a suitable piece of property is I mean, we've been looking, but it's very difficult. You know, so the tribe has taken over some old housing stock from the Bureau of Indian Affairs. We've done some renovations. We call it emergency housing, which is really a 3-month to 6-month opportunity for people then to try to get stabilized. It may be just different situations that get them there, get them stabilized, hopefully get them into another housing opportunity, such as these, you know, the tax credit housing. Housing historically here on the reservation has been pretty tight to find anything to rent. Our opportunities for house purchase are there. We've enhanced those. Now we're talking tribal members on tribal land, but again, we're running into issues of higher costs for the infrastructure, higher costs for foundation work, higher costs for road construction. And so there's a tipping point to where someone could afford a $100,000 home, but if you're going to add another $25,000 for additional work, where's the tipping point? Right. You know, and people have to look at their own budgets. So we try to keep costs low by doing things internally. We have departments that do those. Some of the work is bid out, and we really work on getting those costs on down there. So there's a lot of challenges even in rural areas or rural region that we're in that sometimes limit that opportunity. We have, again, trailer homes that come in are very quick to put in and very, you know, you can purchase one and get it here pretty quickly, but you've got to have a piece of property to set it on that's usable. And again, as we talked about the small garden plots in people's homes, sure, buy a trailer and put it out, you know, on the back 40, so to speak, and pretty soon you've got several that have taken up your farming land and those type things. Housing, and again, housing property, we've tried to look outside the tribal lands for purchase, and I think that's going to be a big piece of us going forward. You know, and I think just fair market rental housing. We've talked to several developers to try to convince them that because of the casino and because of the employee base that they have, that we feel like it would work. Now, we've not had any takers yet, and I think the economy probably has something to do with that. People want to come in and build 100 units. You know, they're a little leery of it, and rightly so. That's a big investment, but we feel like, just as we have lived here and we see the housing strategies that people have to use to get by, we feel like that there's opportunity there. But can you take that opportunity to the bank and sell it? That's the other piece of the puzzle. Right. And for a developer, they've got to be able to assure the bank that the loan's good. Again, a lot of challenges here on that front.
And are the banks supportive? I mean, if somebody had lined up the project, land, ownership, or at least a right of first refusal of a piece of land and so on, would then the bank come in and be supportive, or they're all going to pull back and say, no, we don't support this kind of things?
Well, from the single-family offerings, the banks have been very supportive. If we can get someone through the maze of paperwork, get them to, you know, that loan closing, the banks are working with us pretty well. You're talking sort of a different animal when you're talking 100 units and or whatever their minimum would be. I think there's interest.
And interestingly, it goes back to the discussion that, yes, we do have a lot of land, but actually we don't really have a lot of land.
Right. It's all standing on its head. Corey, you got any comments on that?
I think from a tribal investment perspective, that if it was the tribe saying, we're going to build a 100-unit residential facility, that the banks would be extremely supportive of that. The problem is, with the federal land interest that you have is that a bank can never own that property. And so even though we're interested in using other people's money to possibly do that, even if we were to do that, we're still assuming the majority of the risk as the tribe, so that if this developer came in and the project got underway and maybe the entire 100 units were dried in, and then for whatever reason that developer pulled out, the tribe then would have a huge obligation to complete that project. So if it was a tribal investment, most definitely we would have the support of the banks to go in and do that. But it's a scenario of prioritizing the need on the boundary to say, is the 100 units, and then if the tribe is going to make the investment, should the tribe be making the investment if it's not just housing for enrolled members exclusively, and opening that up for non-enrolled persons to have access to that housing when we have waiting lists of enrolled members who are waiting on housing. So,
thank you. Well, thank you. Thank you for participating to this. It's the beginning of the building of this regional vision. It is not easy. And so it is fundamentally important, or profoundly important, that we continue this discussion. And as I said, we're going to take this information, work it out in terms of scenarios, and come back to you, because next time we come back, we're going to say, here are alternatives that we see are possible in these 5 pillars, probably also in the 6th one by then. And how do we measure your preferences? What are your preferences in those scenarios, so that we can agree on one?
Okay.
So, Vice Chief, if you want to say some closing words, I just want to thank you for your time.
Okay.
It's been terrific. Thank you.
We thank you for your efforts and coming in today. All the guests that are in the audience, we thank you, and particularly the tribal staff that took your time this afternoon to come by and share your input. So we look forward to the next session, and
it's coming.
that'll do it for today, so you can take us off the air.